right. Good evening, everybody. I saw an article today, and I commented a little bit about it on Twitter, and it was discussing the issues with this really, I'll tell you, if you know the history of this law that's called the substantive equivalency law in New York State. It should be an unconstitutional law, because the history of that law was made to discriminate against Catholic schools. It was at a time when there was a tremendous amount of anti-Catholic bigotry, and that was why this law was made, in order to try to destroy the Catholic schools. And similarly, they're trying to use this law that was always understood in a vague manner that avoided the problems that this law could be, to discriminate against the ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities. So there was an article discussing that they put out some kind of explanation, which really was ignorant. The whole idea of this law should be struck down. There should be taken to the Supreme Court to strike down the law, just like with Yoder versus Ohio for the Amish people. In fact, Yoder versus Ohio should have made this law unconstitutional at that time, and I think the main reason why it didn't was because, although they discuss many other parts of the law, that the issues of having people find work and so forth, and there are differences between the Amish communities and the other communities, but nonetheless, I recall another case where there was, and I don't know what the outcome of the case was. I don't know if it even went to court, where there was a family in Texas. They were homeschooling their children, and it seems that they weren't even educating them at all. They were just, teaching, other than music education, as a form of praise and worship in a Christian context. And I believe that they were found that they were allowed to do that, if I'm not mistaken. I've been trying to find any paperwork, any records of this case. Maybe it's just in my imagination. I don't. But if anyone remembers this case, in any event, it was always understood that this substantial equivalency was not in regard to what is taught necessarily, particular subjects, but rather the understanding of substantial equivalency is the level of study, meaning what's taught in any yeshiva is generally, and I'm speaking as someone who went to public school and as someone who went to college and as a college graduate and someone with a regent's diploma, that the things that are taught in any yeshiva are not only substantially equivalent to things that are taught in the public so-called schools, which are garbage, but they're substantially superior to the most cloistered yeshiva, is substantially superior to even the best public so-called schools, especially now with the garbage that they're feeding the kids, with the critical race theory, with the gender issues and all these other things that have nothing to do with anything and are only being designed as a means to destroy America, really. It's a means to essentially, the way we would say it, is divide and conquer. That's really the Democrats' game. It always has been. It always will be. And really, the Democrat Party should have been banned after the Civil War and it was Lincoln's fault for taking Andrew Johnson as a running mate, trying to make some kind of unity between the Republicans and Democrats. The Democrat Party after the Civil War should have been treated the same way as the Nazi Party was treated after World War II, because they're basically the same thing, except that the Nazis, when they were making the Nuremberg laws, and they were looking at the one-drop law that the Democrats had and still continue to have, as you see that somehow Kamala Harris is called black when she's mostly Indian and she's a quarter Irish, and yet she's black because of the one-drop law, and her black ancestors were slave owners. These are the people that the Democrats have, who are really keeping the people of color down, essentially. And the same thing with Obama. He wasn't African American; he was half African and half American. Now he was an American citizen, natural born. I'm not saying that he wasn't eligible to be the president, because even if he was born in Kenya, the fact that his mother was an American citizen makes him naturally born, just like I think Mitt Romney was born in Mexico, and I think Senator Cruz, I believe, was born in Canada, but nonetheless, because his parents are American citizens, that makes him eligible to run for president. Incidentally, Winston Churchill, because his mother was an American citizen, could have run for president as well. It doesn't matter where you're born. What matters is are you a natural born citizen, meaning are your parents citizens? And since Obama's mother was a citizen, he was indeed legal, and he was actually born in Hawaii, but even if he wasn't, it wouldn't make a difference. In any event, going back to what we're talking about, this issue with these schools. So, in a free market, parents can decide. And it's really unfair for the public schools to be judging the private schools when they are in competition, and that they're trying to put their competition out of business. It's like, if Walmart was put in charge of deciding what mom and pop stores are allowed to operate. It's the same type of thing. That's what's going on in New York State. The whole thing is ridiculous. And like we said, these a page of Talmud is much more complicated than what's in and they're not just singing hymns all day, even though they learn hymns also. That's a very minor part of any yeshiva. The major part is very intense study, multilingual, that includes language arts, math, science, history. It's all in there. So and it's much higher level of study. Like Mayor Adams very admirably said, they might not be learning Shakespeare, but what they're learning is not only equivalent, but it's very high level of study. So this whole thing, it should go to court immediately. Anyway, I made a comment about Satmar. We'll make a separate video about that, about the Satmar community, what it's all about, because a lot of people misunderstand because they're familiar with communities like Lubavitch, and they don't know the difference, very, very vast differences between these two communities. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.